Hey everybody, welcome to Forkless Cafe, your weekly DLT insights. My name is Andrew. I'm Hedera Hashgraph's social media manager, and we are super pumped and excited to bring you to this week's episode. We have a special guest joining us, but to start things off, I'm just going to quickly go through the disclaimer. We also have Sharon on managing the live chat. So if you are joining us from far and wide, please let us know where you're joining us from. And drop some comments and questions in the chat for myself or for my guest or for, concerning the subject matter that we're discussing this week. And we're excited to get things going. So our objective is to share interesting news in the industry and the Hashgraph app ecosystem. We're going to start things off with a guest intro, move on to the industry insights, DApp highlights, Hedera highlights, and then the part of the week that I think a lot of people look forward to checking out is the Hero of the Week. So without further delay, we'll get away from that disclaimer, and we'd like to introduce today's special guest, Jillian Godsell, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Block Leaders. Welcome to Forkless Cafe, Jillian.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm coming from a very dark and cold Ireland. Very, very cool. We've just hit winter. Winter's just arrived. There's snow forecast this weekend. So, ugh.
Well, I'm coming to you from Eastern Canada, and we just got dumped on just last night. So,
okay.
At least I can relate to you there.
Well, I shouldn't complain. When I say snow, we might get a light dusting that melts in a couple of minutes, but it's snow. It's cold.
And what time is it in Ireland right now?
It's 5:30, 5:30. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us during your dinner time. We really appreciate it. So how about you give us a little intro on yourself, give us some background for people that aren't already familiar with you, and how you're connected to the ecosystem in general.
Okay. Now, do you want the long version or the short version? I better give you the short version. We'll be here all night. I want to explain why I love blockchain, Hashgraph, I think, why I love this whole industry, the DLT industry it sounds a bit off center, but it actually makes sense. About my background is fintech. My first job was JP Morgan in London. I've lived all around the world, and I've worked in Australia and Singapore, and I've worked in fintech basically. And I'm also a fintech journalist. I do some PR, marketing, and now I do a lot of speaking and sharing. But about 12 years ago, I was in Ireland, and I hit divorce and recession at the same time. And I know you're thinking, why is she talking about divorce on a DLT program? There's a reason. The very short version is that you should never get divorced in a recession, bad time. So we had a big house, big mortgage. My ex went back to the UK and gave all the debt to myself and our two children. So another mistake. Most divorcees get the house, I don't know, I got the debt. So I tried to sell the house because I couldn't afford to keep it. And the whole country was crashing. We needed a soft landing. We had a very hard landing in Ireland. And so I made a video. I moved out with the kids to another little cottage. And I made a video to sell the big house. And the video went viral. And I kind of went viral. It's kind of quirky. And so I epitomized the face of what was happening in Ireland, because we had the Celtic Tiger, and then we had the crash in 2008. And what was happening in Ireland, certainly, and in other parts of the world too as well, the banks are doing a very good job of shaming people for failing financially. And they basically had this notion that somehow it was, dishonest or dishonorable to fail. And as it happened, a lot of people in Ireland started committing suicide, especially men who, they'd lost the job, the mortgages went up, they were sick, hit divorce, whatever, for whatever reason, they weren't able to pay their mortgages. And there were, every day there was suicides which are caused by financial failure. So I got a bit angry. And I started and also the banks had this narrative that people were gaming the system. I'm going, excuse me? So I got a whole bunch of things put together. I got very, very angry. Started talking a lot on radio and TV, became kind of the face of austerity, if you like. So I was interviewed on NPR and Russia Today and Al Jazeera and BBC Two, all sorts of foreign crews would come in and video me, because I kind of epitomized what was happening here. And I, with all the commotion, I got a lot of attention. I got a cash offer to buy the house, but it was 500,000. It wasn't the same amount as the house itself. So banks refused consent to sell. They preferred to repossess it. They preferred to repossess the home, and they sold it for 1/10 of the value the following January. Made no sense. In the midst of all this, I was going through a divorce, trying to fight the banks, getting angry, getting activated. Everything went to pot. But I was getting more and more angry. And then I discovered that in Ireland, the banks don't take parity of risk. Even though they'd repossessed the home, I still owed the debt. So I had to go bankrupt. I was the first female bankrupt under the new laws. And then because I was activated, I went, excuse me. And because under Irish law at that time, as a bankrupt, you're not allowed to run for public office. It was somehow seen as shameful. And you weren't a proper citizen, whatever. And again, I went back and said, excuse me, I've done nothing wrong. I haven't lied and stolen and cheated and killed anybody. I just failed financially. So I brought the Irish government to the High Court and onto the Supreme Court. And I argued that my constitutional rights were being infringed because I wasn't allowed to run for public office. And I changed the law. Ta-da, woo, very exciting. And then the next elections were the 2014 European parliamentary elections. I ran in those as an independent in Ireland South. I got 11,500 votes, which is not enough to get elected, but enough to make me feel vindicated and to make the right noises. And after that, it all went very quiet. Oh, what's happening with my life now? And about a year later, I met blockchain. And I went, DLTs and this whole new world. I went, I've come home. So that's my short version of why I'm in this space. And since then, like I jumped in because I've got 30 years of fintech experience. I jumped in and I went, whoa, let me write here. And then I started being invited to chair conferences and speak at conferences. Now, my carbon footprint is appalling. So Greta Thunberg, I apologize. And I actually feel very bad about this, but I've been all over. I've been like, I'm just back from, where was I? Malta. I was at the Malta AI blockchain conference. And before that, it was London, CC Forum. Before that, it was Vienna. Before that, it was Macau, Cape Town, New York, Dubai, Sri Lanka, Colombo, Amsterdam, Paris, you name it. I've been going on to all these conferences and I just love it because the people are amazing. The energy is amazing. And I love in particular, my greatest joy is to chair conferences because you get to meet everybody, even though it can be a bit fleeting, whatever sometimes. But it's just, you have to listen because if you're chairing, you have to know what's going on. So you can't just chat with your friends in the back. So it's a learning experience. And I love it. I mean, I was co-chairing the CC Forum actually in London there just recently. Loved it. You meant to be, and that was like crazy. Anybody in blockchain and DLT were there, but it was just amazing. And it was fabulous time. Oh, and if I may brag, I got the 2019 AI and Blockchain Journalist of the Year Award. So it was quite a nice time. So,
nice. Congratulations. Thank you so much for sharing that impactful story with us. I don't think it's by accident that you came from fintech and excuse me, but the last global economic downturn resulted in blockchain, DLT, Bitcoin, all of these conversations. Who would know where we were right now if we didn't have that economic downturn back in 2007, 2008? You could argue that certainly birthed this new technology exponential movement, right? So, wow.
And the other thing I should add to as well, I do a lot of advocacy for diversity, gender in particular, because for the first time in my life, my age and my gender is a positive. In my career, it's a positive that I'm 54 years of age and I'm working in this industry. People want my gray hairs. Well, whatever, brown hairs. They want my experience that I have in the 30 odd years. And the other thing that's very interesting too as well, and this is kind of a joke, but they say that, how if the Lehman Brothers had been the Lehman sisters, we mightn't have had a financial crash. So I'm really, really pumped to get women into this sector. I'm so glad that Sharon, which is meeting here now, but I'm so glad there are like 2 women and 1 man. Not that we want to dominate you, but it's just, we need more women in the sector because it just makes sense. I'm not anti-men, but you need a balance. Kind of too much testosterone.
Jillian, I'm not ashamed to admit that I work for 2 women in my company.
Yay!
And very, very happy to do so. And if I can share a quick Canadianism, if I can call it that. Kevin OLeary is a famous investor on the American Shark Tank show, and before that, the Canadian Dragon's Den show. I know you guys have Dragon's Den out that way too. And he famously preaches on stage around the world that I think he says his 10 best business investments, all female CEOs and founders, all of them, every single one. Yeah. So there's a lot of reason for us to encourage more women to enter this space. I could not agree with you more. So thank you for sharing all that.
And it's interesting just to add one other thing to that too as well, to back up both our points, is that there's been studies recently by Nordea, Credit Suisse, and McKinsey. And they have pointed out when you have women in decision-making roles in companies, the profitability of those companies goes up between 12 and 22%, just by having a woman in a decision-making role. Mm-hmm. That's like mad, but it's big data that's showing it's not just touchy-feely, nicey-nicey. If we have the two, because women bring a different set of skills, and it's not, I'm not trying to So you're them and us, you know, and then we get into the transgender and all the way crazy stuff. But we need diversity. So anyway, that's what I'm really, really keen to when I do talk as a chair. I'm saying, tell your sister, tell your mom, tell your cousin, tell your kids, get them all in here. So because this is too important, a technology and an industry and a movement to for it to fail. We have to make sure it succeeds.
Agreed. And clearly this ties into the overarching conversation of DLT technology. What we're talking about here is distribution and decentralization, which ties into diversity as well, right? You can't have true decentralization or distributed systems without diversification. They go hand in hand. So could not be more thrilled and excited to have you join us today, Jillian. This format is super casual. We're going to review some of the latest current events. This kind of gives us an opportunity to highlight some of the news that's trending over the previous week. And a lot of people really enjoy the authenticity of live streams that we can engage in the conversation. And I'm sure Sharon will let us know if there's some comments or questions in the live chat for us. So let me share my screen again, and we will get going on these articles. Oh, actually, you know what? First, we'll just give a quick preview. Going to quickly touch on some predictions of 2020. Many paths that lead blockchain adoption, and no two are alike. Why your next database is a graph. What's blockchain actually good for anyway? U.S. Congressman to introduce bill clarifying digital asset issuance. And then DApp highlights, we got why enterprises are paying attention to Ethereum 2.0. We've got a bunch of news on tune.fm. And a quick reminder, if you're joining us for the very first time, I'm going to include these links in the description below this video after we're done, so that you can follow along if you're watching the recording, so that you can get a deeper dive, a better sense on some of this, because we're not going to go too deep with all these articles, because if we did, these live streams would be 3 hours long. And then finally, Hedera highlights. We got some IBM, Intel, JP Morgan news from Microsoft. Hedera founder dismisses quantum computing as crypto's Y2K problem, and then a social sizzler. All right, so let me back out of this and let's kick things off here. So we've got Martha, VP and Principal Analyst with Forrester, with these predictions for 2020. Distributed ledger technology moves beyond proof of concept. This is what we're all waiting for these days, right? So I prepped here a little bit. Enhanced services and tool offerings, and the most forward-looking firms will continue exploring strategic approaches to the tokenization of digital and physical assets, supporting by smart contracts. Tokenization of digital and physical assets is a massive subject, far too deep for us to touch on with much detail during this call, but we've talked about in the past why it's so important to have a DLT that has a guarantee not to fork. And if you're joining us for the very first time, a quick example that a lot of people like to use is, what if you were to buy real estate? You know, Jillian, just recently discussed real estate problems, and a lot of people are talking about DLT actually lowering the barrier of entry for real estate investors to enter the market. But more importantly, if you have this asset, which is very illiquid, you, for the first time, by using this technology, will be able to tokenize your asset. Maybe you want to tokenize 80% of your property and allow investors globally to access your investment, to buy bits and pieces of your property, and which will provide some liquidity for you, and will offer some real estate exposure, investment exposure to these people that otherwise wouldn't have access to that opportunity. And if this was to occur on a platform that is allowed to fork, after the fork occurs, your transaction is recorded on a competing platform with a competing cryptocurrency. So what would happen if you then sold your stake in that property, or the original owner wanted to get rid of the property? That transaction would be recorded on one ledger, whereas the other ledger still shows the original owner owning that property. You can only imagine the chaos that would ensue if you don't have a no forking guarantee. And we're starting to see more and more, especially over the last few months, with an IRS announcement and whatnot, that forks cause a lot of chaos in the marketplace, and it's something to take into account seriously. And if I scroll down here, she does touch on, she's got 3 points here. More than 80% of blockchain deployments will be hybrid or multi-cloud. Interoperability will move center stage. And then finally here, the public versus private permission blockchain debate will reach executive teams. And if you want to download and read the full report, you can get that right here. Okay.
Do you know what's interesting? Just pipe in one little thing. with mortgage. The fork issue is massive. I totally agree with that. But going back a step to the whole idea of when the biggest thing a person tends to typically own is their house. And of course, a mortgage, what it means is a death note. That's what comes from the French. And it is actually a death note. So it's a wonderful idea that people who are lucky enough to own their own properties can actually release that equity. It's huge. And then also, how do people, because I love this whole area because it democratizes access to finance, for example. And if you want to invest in property, typically you need to have a lot of money. This way, not. So I agree the forking thing is a bit of an issue. I'm not trying to solve that, but the whole concept behind it is very exciting.
Oh, very exciting. Couldn't agree with you more. All right. There we go. So we got Deloitte here. Mini pass lead to blockchain adoption and no two are alike. An industry by industry look at Deloitte's 2019 Global Blockchain Survey. If you're at all interested in blockchain tech or DLT, I highly recommend you check this link out. It's far too big to go in a deep.
I didn't read it.
I haven't even read the whole thing. I've read probably half of it, and I'm just going to scroll down here. They've got all kinds of graphs. So if you like graphs and imagery, you're going to love this article. Sure. And I think I actually talked about this back in May as well. So share of the respondents investing at least $5 million in blockchain initiatives. So the blue line is, if you're watching on mobile, I apologize, and this might be a little tiny for you, but the next 12 months, and then the green is the prior 2 months. So in almost every single case, their respondents plan on investing at least $5 million in blockchain initiatives is increasing. So what does that tell us? That tells us a lot of these enterprises see potential in this technology. And then going down, already in production versus planning to be in production within 1 year. Again, you see the previous 12 months to the next 12 months, these green lines far exceed. And I mean, we have different industries here, right? We have financial services, we got manufacturing. So you can, if you're watching the, oh, sorry.
I was saying, this looks as though it's going to directly contradict one of your other links about what's happening in blockchain, not much. This seems to indicate that, there's a lot happening and there's a lot coming down the line.
Yeah, and I think it's important to always look at, some people say every coin has three sides: heads, tails, and the edge. And I think it's always really important to try to position yourself on the edge and look at both perspectives. And if I can find valid information coming from both sides, I'm certainly going to like to flag that for people, right? But yeah, good observation for sure.
And then also what I'm saying with the hiring, we know that the majority of jobs on LinkedIn are for blockchain and they're all commanding a premium. So get your blockchain hats on. Get
your blockchain hat. And if you're watching this live stream and you can identify that your industry is near the top of these graphs, or maybe near the bottom of these graphs, you can sort of infer what direction your career may be pushed towards or motivated towards, right? Attributes about blockchain: top 5 industries in each category. Manufacturing, yeah, it's lots of manufacturing. And consumer products, what else we got here? Professional services, all kinds. And yeah, so as you guys can see, I'm only halfway down this page. As you guys can see, there's tons of information here. And I think I'll quickly just scroll down to the bottom. It shows, yeah, here we go. To summarize, the survey was fielded in 12 locations, 11 languages. Look at all these countries that they polled. Yeah, Deloitte did a lot of work on this report. It's a free link right here. Anybody can access it. And then if you just want a quick highlights, you can just scroll down here for, oh, I think I missed it. There was a summary section. Probably missed it. Oh, here we go. Yeah, concluding thoughts here. All of this seeming incoherence, I love this quote. Incoherence is really the sum and substance of this evolutionary process as each industry sorts out the most sensible path to blockchain adoption. And I think that's key and ties into what you just shared with us, Jillian. I think depending on your industry and your use case, you are either going to see major disruption from blockchain and DLT tech, or another industry may not even experience a blip. It really probably depends on where your interests lay. Right?
Well, certain. I mean, I know that I'm working with some clients in the freight forwarding industry, and that's a really interesting. It's an ancient, moving goods around the world is an ancient industry, if you like. It's been there since time immemorial, but it's so antiquated, and a lot of it is based on paper. It's kind of crazy. And so when you have the things like the Internet of Things can now monitor your goods in transit. So, the heat, drop, shock, all these things that you actually need to look for your goods, make sure that they're still in the same condition they were when they were boarded. But that's no good unless it's immutable. So it's no good having all this information if somebody can go in and delete it and say, well, actually, I didn't forget to turn the heat on last night, or the ship turned the cooler, or whatever it is. So it's something like that, because the freight forwarding is an ancient industry with they use faxes still. Faxes and couriers for the international trade finance. It's mad. And all of a sudden it's going to be jumping. So industries that maybe are going slow will have a tipping point. And oh my God, it's like they don't have legacy stuff. They say in Africa, a lot of people and communities don't have landlines. They went straight from no phones to smartphones. So even though your industry might appear to be very old fashioned, it could be in for a big shock.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's I think a lot of enterprises struggle. They see the potential with blockchain, but they struggle on how they can actually deploy. And I think we're going to talk about it in a later article here, where they struggle where the value really comes from. And I think it just boils down to a very simple question. And it comes down to, do you require trust amongst multiple parties, multiple entities? And if the answer is yes, then DLT technology is probably going to prove extremely valuable for you in your industry. If the answer is no, well, then we're talking about something that's far too complicated. All you need is a simple database, and everyone is, like you said, anyone can delete or add information as they see fit, right? But if you require trust, like you said, they're using faxes. If you require trust amongst these different manufacturers and suppliers and transporters, and everyone needs to understand that they trust the system that they're all using, that no one can add or delete information without the other one knowing, then then DLT blockchain tech is going to be really important to you. Yeah, good point. So we got a Forbes article here, why your next database is a graph, as long as we're on the subject of databases. So you might be wondering, why are we talking about this? I reviewed this article thinking maybe I'll bring it up, maybe I won't. And I thought for those of you who are just learning of Hedera Hashgraph for the very first time, we are not a blockchain. We are not a chain of blocks. Our architecture is called a DAG, a directed acyclic graph. And the best way I've ever heard it described to me is that a blockchain will operate in series and a DAG will operate in parallel, which is why its performance metrics are orders of magnitudes more quicker and more efficient. And it's important to understand that you're talking about a collection of nodes that are communicating with one another. And if one node was to go down, maybe a power outage, some kind of technical problem, then the flow of information would simply look like a river, and it would simply just flow around that node and would keep going, and you would still achieve consensus in DLT language. But scrolling down here, I just want to highlight this part here. There are many types of database, and most are built with columns and rows. But the graph database is essentially different because it is made up of a collection of nodes and edges. You can think of a graph database as a set of interconnected circles or nodes, and each node represents a person, a product, a place, or thing that we want to build into our data universe. So there are multiple DLTs that use graphs, but I want to just quickly highlight before we move on that those circles and those edges don't just because different DLTs are using similar diagrams, a lot of people think, oh, that's the same thing. That's they're all different. It's not necessarily the case. Sometimes the circles represent something different, and sometimes the edges represent something different. So sometimes it does warrant you taking a little deeper dive into the weeds to understand those different subtle differences, but make a massive difference at the end. But if you're interested in the difference with graphs and different architectures, I highly recommend you check out this article too. Okay, so yeah, and this is what Jillian was talking about earlier, that what's blockchain actually good for anyway? For now, not much. The previous article we discussed was very positive from Deloitte, and this one is looking at the other side of the coin. So I was actually really impressed with this article. Who did this? Ariel Davis. Oh no, that's the illustration. I can't see an author's name here. Scrolling down here, it says blockchains offer immutable ledger of data without relying on a central authority. We just touched on this. That's the core to the hype behind the technology. But the cryptographic machinery behind blockchains is notoriously slow. Early platforms like Ethereum, which gave rise to the ICO frenzy, are far too sluggish to handle most commercial applications. For that reason, decentralized projects represent a tiny portion of corporate blockchain efforts, perhaps 3%, says Alpine London, a researcher at Cambridge Center of Alternative Finance. The rest take shortcuts, so-called permissioned blockchains, borrow ideas and terms from Bitcoin, but cut corners in the name of speed and simplicity. And they don't necessarily say it in this article, but I think what they're hinting at is the blockchain trilemma. Some people look at the blockchain trilemma as speed, fairness, and security. Sometimes people substitute decentralization or into the blockchain trilemma as well. Fundamentally, what this means is when you optimize a blockchain to be very fast, then you're sacrificing on the other 2 points. It's very difficult to create a blockchain under the current technical environment to be effective with all 3 points. And that's where we believe Hedera Hashgraph has actually come out and addressed this very issue by doing things very different. Hedera Hashgraph is very different from any other DLT platform out there. So this article does highlight that for certain use cases, blockchain is just far too slow and ineffective. And I read the whole thing, and some people are basically just saying, like, we have faxes and emails, and we I think where is it? They interviewed, so I'm having a hard time understanding how blockchain is going to really positively affect my citizens. This is in Vermont. Spent a little bit of time in Vermont last spring. It's a beautiful part of the world. And she basically explains to this blockchain technology company that they worked for like a year to make this work to settle land deals, purchases. And they ended up passing on the opportunity because she was able to get everything done with faxes and emails, and all the information is backed up on 3 servers plus printed on paper.
That sounds very old-fashioned. I'm sorry.
It is very old-fashioned. But when her argument was that she couldn't call someone up for tech support to handle an issue, that's why she passed. She was like, I don't have anyone to call if there's a problem, and you're making me jump through all these hoops. And unfortunately, she passed on this blockchain implementation because she found it too frictional, essentially, at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, it sounds so she hasn't got support, not that she didn't like the blockchain.
Yeah, well,
Get tech support.
I don't know if it's I don't know if tech support. Yeah. She did say that was one of her complaints. She did say.
But that's an issue with the process, not an issue with the technology. She doesn't have tech support in place.
Yeah, it's apparently whatever company she was working with, she didn't have. I can't find it in the article right now, but she did say she couldn't pick up the phone and call someone.
But that's a human problem. That's not a technology problem. It wasn't the blockchain stopping her doing that. Yeah, it was the company that provides the service, whatever.
And so here she's going to continue on relying on 3 servers and printing paper, which you could argue is not really good for the environment, right? So if you're just going to keep printing paper.
I'm not impressed. Not impressed.
Got a question from Sharon here. Not now, but at the end, here is a question for Jillian. Oh, okay. So that's a question for Jillian at the end. Okay, never mind. Alrighty. So moving on. U.S. Congressman to introduce bill clarifying digital asset issuance. This is great. This just means we're moving forward. One of the biggest headaches for people in this space is the lack of regulatory clarity. And here we have on October 24th, Congressman Tom Emmer, who serves as the ranking member of the House Financial Services Committee Task Force on Financial Technology, announced that he is introducing a new law that can provide a clear path to regulatory certainty for cryptocurrencies and other emerging technologies under securities law. I love this part. The bill will allow companies that are already compliant with securities laws or who have already acquired a securities exemption to distribute their assets without subjecting them to further regulations. And the quote down here made me chuckle. I have to share this. Companies that have followed our current rules of the road, even if convoluted, deserve the certainty that they can offer their digital asset to the public and help contribute to a truly decentralized network. I am hopeful this nonpartisan legislation will receive strong support and help ensure investment in the United States for these extraordinary technologies, even if convoluted. Yeah.
Can I jump in? I'm just back from Malta, the AI and blockchain conference there. And I was moderating a panel on regulatory progress in Malta. And as we know, Malta is doing a very good job. They have brought in the MFSA, they brought in They've actually brought in rules. You want to open a wallet, a cryptocurrency exchange, and something else too as well. I can't remember what it was. And maybe it was an IE or whatever. There are rules. There are rules there. And even at the ground level, they also have, you can get like blockchain and AI certification, which is voluntary, but they have lots of roadmaps and paths for people. And what I think is so interesting that last year I was at a meetup in Dublin and a major law firm was there. And the guy from the senior partner, he said, guys, the rules aren't in yet. He said, and you know what, when they come in, they'll all be applied retrospectively and you'll all go to jail. So not so good, but I think he was trying to drum up business. But I was very impressed with Malta because they're all over it. They have rules, they have pathways. So because as a company, you've enough to be doing, as they say, you've enough to be doing, trying to get your stuff together without having to figure out, am I breaking the rules? You know, so the more and also the other thing too, as well as I came up in that conference too, as well, a large part of the problem is that maybe that convoluted adjective makes sense. A lot of regulators are trying to put, square pegs into round holes. Yeah. There are apples and oranges and they're not the same thing. So they have to learn, they've got to regulate in a different way for crypto because it's not regular stuff.
Yeah. And it's no surprise that we've seen lots of people in this space set up shop in Malta. Malta is attracting all kinds of business. Businesses are registering right there in Malta because they are so forward thinking and they're actually providing that regulatory clarity that the industry is just desperate for. So
that's cool.
Very, very fair. I've never been to Malta, but it's on my to-do list. I gotta get out. So we got another Forbes article here, why enterprises are paying attention as Ethereum 2.0 unfolds. Wanted to include this into our dApps section simply because obviously this is going to affect a lot of dApps currently running on Ethereum. And so the switch to 2.0 isn't without risks. The article here does highlight some of them here. The necessary work is extremely technical. Not many people are qualified to turn a complex research paper into a practical solution. Currently, all work is being done by several teams located in different parts of the world with different agendas and different timelines. Everyone is working towards the same goal, but inherently friction of having distributed teams is present. The transition to Ethereum 2.0 is so complex that it involves wrapping up the current network and placing it inside the new chain so that they will run together for a period of time. There are a significant chance that certain existing functionality and smart contracts will break. I have heard a lot of talk online about that point particularly, because these companies and dApps have spent, in some cases, millions of dollars, and now they're facing with the possible outcome that their smart contracts are going to break. There is the potential for a hard fork split as Ethereum 1.0 and Ethereum 2.0 will coexist, and the transition might not be successful, with some node operators choosing to run the old chain. So lots of controversy, for lack of a better word. I mean, we're not short of controversy in this industry, but lots of conversation around that. And I know there's a lot of dApps out there that are very concerned. Okay, moving on. We have to share this news. VentureBeat did a great article here on Tune.fm. Taps Hedera Hashgraph for novel use of cryptocurrency and fast music micropayments. Had a major announcement here recently. Musical artists have always struggled to get their fair share of the revenue their music generates, but this new system will enable a pay-as-you-go business model using a Hedera-based cryptocurrency token called JAM that enables fast micropayments for every second of music that streams between artists and fans. Andrew Antar, the co-founder, has a very famous saying at this point that when the music gets played, the artist gets paid. And as it should be, a lot of people would argue. And this is a fantastic article because we got a quote down here. That's from Andrew Antar. Where's the quote from? Oh, right here, from Beyonce's dad here. I see cryptocurrency and streaming paired together as the wave of the future, said Knowles in a statement. Tune.fm has put together an incredible platform with a unique user experience, and Music World Entertainment Corp is excited to share its content on the Tune.fm platform. Very exciting. This is going to affect a lot of people who enjoy listening to music, and this is arguably one of the bigger, more widespread use cases that can affect just average everyday people.
Yeah, no, I watched some of the interviews. I did watch some of those actually beforehand, and great guys. It's a super idea, and it makes sense. Makes sense. It's fair.
Yeah, I love the fact that they've gamified it as well. So
yes,
artists will now have the ability to pay for first listens. So So not only are they getting more exposure, but now you could actually earn an income just by listening to music if you're listening to an artist for the very first time. And then if you enjoy their music, then the cash flow reverse, and now you start paying them micropayments. It's fascinating. I love it.
It's clever.
It's just incredible. And then we got another article here about Tune.fm. It popped up as well, and I had to share. I'm just going to share all these links because it's big news. It's really exciting stuff. And then Coinfomania also touched on it, and in their article, they even go far as to compare Hashgraph versus blockchain. So yeah, these 3 links will be available for everybody in the description below. Okay, moving on. This is pretty big news. IBM, Intel, JP Morgan, and Microsoft joined others on new blockchain token spec. A business consortium led by the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance said their new blockchain-based token specification can create regulatory compliant digital currency for use in any number of scenarios. So this touches on what we were just discussing on. Basically, my understanding is that this is just going to lower the barrier of entry. It's called the Token Taxonomy Framework 1.0. It was developed by more than 25, I read further, it's 25 companies, and Hedera Hashgraph is part of this, and overseen by the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. Its goal will give businesses and developers access to a set of reusable cross-industry components to create usable tokens. So this is, my understanding is just going to take care of a lot of the friction that the industry is currently
Isn't it interesting that big names are joining this and they're leaving Facebook and Calibra?
You know what? I didn't bring it up. I didn't bring it up, but many of these articles, actually, when you scroll down, almost all of them touch on the Facebook Libra project.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to harp on it again, but yeah, almost all of these articles mention it. But yeah, that's a fair observation. Okay, we got a Decrypt article here. Hedera founder dismisses quantum computing as crypto's Y2K problem. So recently, Dr. Gleeman Baird, had a hour-and-a-half workshop at Web Summit, and then also participated in a panel discussion on stage. It's been actually his panel discussion has been gaining a lot more publicity than the workshop, funny enough. But it says here, Dr. Gleeman Baird likens quantum supremacy to the millennium bug, promising that the cryptography underpinning Bitcoin is safe.
I have to jump in.
Go for it.
Because I was a rookie programmer with JP Morgan before the year 2000. And what was I given to do? Date validation routines. So if any of my systems were there in the year 2000, they would have all fallen over, that's for sure. I'm a one-woman Y2K disaster programmer.
That's ironic.
Well, I didn't hear. I mean, I'm gone a long time, obviously, but I looked at that and thought, oh, that's funny.
That's good. That is funny. So we have a Dr. Gleeman Baird quote here. I believe this quote is accurate. I haven't checked with him myself actually, but it says the truth is quantum computers are really cool, and they're not going to have any impact on this industry. Quantum computers can't currently break crypto's hash codes, and even when we have big quantum computers someday, they aren't going to affect it. Similarly, we have a decade away from anyone breaking signatures, says Baird, and when they do become vulnerable, we can very easily switch to different digital signatures that are totally secure. So quantum supremacy, quantum computers is just, it's the buzz thing right now. Everybody's talking about it, but all the content that I've reviewed, I know Vice News did a big piece on that on their YouTube channel. And they basically came to the same conclusion that Dr. Gleeman Baird just said there, that it's not really a concern at all in the short term. So people who are worried can most likely, take a breath. Is the sense that I'm picking up, anyways. Okay, and staying on that note, I'm gonna do our social sizzler for the week. I posted this video of Lehman on that panel discussion that I was just talking about, and this video just did really well on our Twitter account. It just got way more engagement than any other tweet that we did all week, and so it's interesting to see that there's a lot of attention on this right now. But it was good to see Lehman participate in the panel, and I was happy to share it with the community, and it obviously really resonated with them because it got lots of engagement. All right, so that wraps up that wraps up our news section. We can move on to the section of Forkless Cafe that people like to share and brag about. We would like to congratulate our hero of the week, Sharat Chandra. I apologize if I just destroyed your name, but Sharat, we have seen you extremely active on social. I can tell that you were very passionate about digital identity and identity sovereignty. And so I want you to connect with me after the live stream. I'll shoot you a message and we'll get you a discount code to the Hedera store. Just a small appreciation for us to recognize you as an important community member and an active community member. And so not sure if you're watching live or if you're going to watch the recording, but would like to congratulate you. Thank you so much. And we'd like to also remind the developers watching to check out our GitHub. That's where you're going to find a lot of information to help yourself familiarize yourself a lot more with Hedera Hashgraph and get yourself going. Also, we are going to be sharing a lot more details around developers on onboarding onto Hedera Hashgraph and helping them support them as best we can when it comes to building dApps. Especially if you are focused on a dApp that is high throughput and requires high throughput and low latency, you will be very pleasantly surprised to see that the Hedera Hashgraph network has what you require there. So okay, so maybe I should pull up the question here that we had for Jillian. Okay,
that means someone's watching. Woo!
Exactly.
I do two radio shows in Dublin, and I was thinking afterwards, is anyone listening? And then maybe a friend might message me out. I go, oh, you were listening. Oh, thank goodness.
Well, I think my mom is watching. So
oh, hi, Mom. What's your mom?
We got one for sure.
What's your mom's name?
Vicky.
Hi, Vicky.
So we got the question here. What do we got here? What does Jillian think about Hedera versus other DLTs, and what advantages might it have over other DLTs?
Good question. Okay, it's a good question because I like to consider myself as blockchain agnostic. So it's the whole ethos behind it. And I'm not technical enough. I'm the woman that wrote the bad date validation routines and would have caused whatever systems they were in to fall over in the year 2K. So I'm not, I can't speak in terms of technology. I do know that the Hashgraph people that I've mixed with are a really nice community. I like them a lot. So in terms of community, they seem very caring. And that's what I go for as opposed to maybe the technology. So yeah, people. And from what I understand of the technology, again, bad programmer, it does seem pretty amazing. And that explanation you gave earlier about the stream, that was quite a nice, one node falls over and the rest kind of go around. It's kind of a cool thing. No, it's the people. I like the people. And I like the Lehman Baird and his name eludes me now, but they seem really, really, really very smart guys. That always helps.
Our CEO, Mance Harmon,
thank you.
They have a wonderful story, and I think that's actually a big part why I ended up joining the team. To be honest with you, just learning about their background and their expertise and learning.
So it's good to have smart people in control.
Yeah,
nice smart people.
Yeah, and I like that actually you've answered that perfectly in a sense that you focus on the kind of people that are drawn to the particular project. Birds of a feather flock together. I don't know if that would quantify in this discussion, but I certainly am a believer that you're going to do business with people you know, like, and trust, right? And that's a popular way of doing business. And you look at the quality of the people that you're surrounding yourself with. A lot of people believe in you're the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with, right? And so it's important to pay attention to those kinds of things. And you do look at the community that is growing up and building up around the particular ecosystem. So thanks for highlighting that. And we have meetups all over the world. I mean, I started out as an ambassador with Hedera Hashgraph, and I like you just described. I wasn't speaking on stage or going to interviews like you were all over the world. I was just hosting small meetups in Vancouver, Canada at the time. And one thing led to another.
I think, and I don't know for now, but I know at one stage the Ireland, Dublin meetup was the most popular meetups, as in most frequent meetup outside of the US. We were the most frequent. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Claim to fame. Yeah. We haven't done one in a while, so People may have taken over, but certainly
Yeah.
up to in 2018, we were definitely the second after the US, the most popular, most frequent meetup in the world.
Wow, that's very cool. Yeah, there's always going to be a place for in-person meetups, and I know we might as well share this too, that we're going to be launching a virtual meetup, a regular monthly virtual meetup. So if you can't get to Ireland or you can't get to Vancouver or wherever, you can still join us because it's important to get this information out there, because there are developers all over the world that are desperate for this information. We see the questions in social media all the time, and we're working very hard to make sure that information is easily accessible in a quick and efficient manner.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I should quickly ask Sharon if there's any other comments or questions in the chat that we can help address with the community.
All good for now.
Right on, good stuff. Well, thank you so much, Jillian, for joining us. I can't thank you enough, taking time out of your dinner hour
Thanks,
to
Jillian.
join us on Forkless
You're
Cafe.
very welcome. I'm sending the invoice later.
Sure, you got my email. Do you like t-shirts? Do you like t-shirts?
I do like t-shirts. I actually have a nice purple MVP Hashgraph Hedera t-shirt.
Yes, that's right.
When I saw it, I thought when I first got it, I thought, MVP, what does that mean? You know, the viable product, or I'm going, what? No, then it was most valuable player. Great.
Yeah, that's
minimum,
right.
Minimum viable product.
Minimum viable product. Yeah, no, not that.
No, I know, I'm upset. No, thank you so much for having me. And excuse, I've got a cold. Excuse my squeaky voice.
Oh, you're totally fine. I didn't hear a squeaky voice, but yeah, I hope you feel better soon. And
thank you.
For those of you watching the live stream or the recording, thanks for joining us. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you want more content like this, and tell your developer friends that this is where you want to come to get all the latest and greatest from the DLT space. But thanks for joining us, everybody. Take care. We'll see you next week.
Bye.